Good time zone, sweet world. It's Monday, February 6th, 2023, and welcome on into the Stream Atom Monday show, a podcast about video games and the economy. Once again, it's much later than I ever wanted it to be, but I'm here. What's up, y'all? My name's Atom. I'm a business economist, former data and public policy analyst, and a current financial analyst. But above all, I'm a video gamist. Damn it, I play video games, and I'm pretty okay at them. And even when I'm not, I'm pretty entertaining. Today in games, we'll talk a little bit more about Fire Emblem Engage. Though it's been a light week for me in terms of games. Just didn't have a lot of time to play too much outside of Fire Emblem. But there was a lot of news this week as well, so we'll get into a little bit of Sony and EA, who released their Q3 earnings, and we'll also talk about E3. And so yeah, I'll just try to run a little bit of a tight ship as I sail the accountancy. This week I spent probably, I'd say, like, I counted 24 hours on studying, and it was pretty awful. I was answering a ton of case kind of questions on proper revenue recognition and things relating to audits and providing assurance over financial statements and stuff like that. So it was very, very tedious, and I guess I did pretty well in the end, but it's a lot, and it's really annoying sometimes, the amount of time that needs to be put into these things. So yeah, as I say, I'm like a full day late, so it's getting pretty hard to try to keep this on the rails, but I'll keep it on the rails as long as I can. Maybe eventually I'll have to make it into like a bi-weekly type of deal, but we'll see what happens. Before I get into Fire Emblem, let me just explain what it is that I do here. So welcome on into my, for now, weekly show where I explore the intersection of video games and the world around us. Join me as I delve into the latest in video games and how it affects global markets, the industry trends, and as I try to provide some in-depth analysis of individual games. But don't worry, I'm not all talk. I'm also a pretty solid gamer, and I'll be showing off my variety of I'll be showing off a variety of games after the show, both new and old. And so whether you're a hardcore gamer or you're just looking for entertainment or you're looking for information, my show is the perfect place to be. And for those of you that want to catch the video on demand later, you can find it archived with chapters and timestamps on YouTube. What's poppin' YouTube? So yeah, let's talk games. So I was playing Fire Emblem Engage. I've spent quite a bit more time in it. I think I've probably spent maybe 12 hours. So again, Fire Emblem Engage was released on January 20th this year for the Nintendo Switch and developed by Intelligent Systems. It's out there with a retail price of $60, but there's also like $40 worth of additional DLC packs that will release. I think there's 4 of them, and they'll release over time. It's up to you whether you want to pre-order, but I mean, I wouldn't, because there's no, you don't really get anything for giving them money ahead of time. And so in this game, right, in Engage, you're playing an amnesiac protagonist who has awoken after a 1,000-year slumber to respond to what I like to call the Jajaryu, the evil dragon, the fell dragon named Sombron. And so as you start up, you're not quite sure whether there's like a corruption thing happening, and they're twisted undead people are starting to come, and you're figuring out that they're former soldiers or whatever that have been risen from the grave. And you're not quite sure whether that's because of you, something that you've done, or is that just you're waking up because this is happening. And as it spins up, you'll quickly realize that there are a lot of kind of anime tropes and cliches that are showing up. Right, so there will be things like really long monologues that will explain the plot to you quite directly, almost as if they're talking to you and not having a well, there's not a it's a monologue, right? So it's like, wait, are you talking to yourself or are you talking to me? Those kind of things, right? And those monologues will also explain game mechanics. There'll be kind of like predictable story beats. Like pretty early on, you'll have a mother, and you'll just have met your mother after maybe 1,000 years, and you'll just out of the blue, your mother in the game will start, like making these statements about, oh, how happy we're going to be, and all these things, all these wonderful things we're going to be able to do in the future. And immediately you should be thinking like, okay, well, hang on, what's going to happen to this? Is she going to die? Right? Or like, is she going to get hurt? And so anyway, nothing bad's going to happen, right? And then you also have these like story climax type of moments where they just drag on too much. The dialogue just drags on a bit too much, and outside of that, when you're doing like side content and all this stuff, you'll have this mushy and cute silly dialogue pieces, which, I mean, if you're into that, then that's cool, right? But if you're not, it can become grating on you. So, how I sum it up is basically, if you've watched an anime and you can recall certain scenes of that anime that were, trope or cliche, or, you'll know what to expect from Engage in terms of some choices that they make in terms of the narrative. And so, to that end, though, I will say, when I swapped the language from English to Japanese in the game, I immediately had a much better time with it, because then I stopped thinking, oh, well, this is like a terribly, trope heavy type of English dub. And then I was able to flip that switch in my head and go like, oh, it's just a bad anime, right? I mean, or a good anime with some bad parts that are just kind of silly and like, oh, come on, type of thing, right? And that put me in the right mood to be able to enjoy what the game is good at. And what the game's good at is the gameplay, right? So in Engage, you'll split your time between the battlefield and your home base. Your home base is this like dragon-shaped floating city in the sky called the Somnal, and that's where you'll maintain and manage your army, both the gear and the relationships. And so on the battlefield, if you've played a Fire Emblem or a tactics game before, you'll take charge of some pretty familiar units. You've got your axe brutes who mess up polearm users. You've got the polearm users that mess up the sword wielders, and you got the sword wielders who will mess up the axes. You've also got archers and mages who can attack from range and on diagonals, and then you've also got some special units. So these assassins who can poison, and you've got like ground and air cavalry who can, they have great movement. They can move around long distances, and even after an attack move around as well. And that's right, that's air cavalry as well, right? So you have people with pole arms on Pegasus, basically, on Pegasuses. And then this kind of next thing, though, which is where the naming sense of Engage comes in, is that you'll have these, on these rings, you'll have these spooky, famous Fire Emblem ghost people who live in them. And that's kind of it's part of what becomes the defining mechanic of the game, which is the Engage mechanic. And so when you have those spooky ghost people, right, you pair them onto your heroes in the game, or, well, really any army member you can choose to do that. And then on the battlefield, you can hit the Engage thing. And what that'll do is like, it'll do kind of this weird Dragon Ball Z-esque fusion type of thing for 3 turns, where now you have, as your 2 characters are kind of fused together, you have access to some special moves, and you might even get some special bonuses and stuff like that. So for your first ring, you'll start out with Marth, who you will almost certainly pair with Alir, who is the protagonist. But that's up to you. You can swap that around afterwards if you want. By doing so, it gives you some passives that increase the avoidance stat. So in this game, you normally think that avoidance is dodge chance in other games, but in this game, well, avoidance works like dodge in any other game, right? Avoidance is your chance to evade an attack as it comes in. Dodge in this game is talking about the chance to get critically hit. So the more dodge you have, the less chance you can get critically hit. That's how it works in this game. So anyway, in general, as you progress through, you'll find more spooky ghost people to put like more rings with these, you know, famous Fire Emblem characters from previous games and so on. But usually what the game will do is it'll introduce a new character to your army as you find more of these rings, right? So you'll have kind of like a natural pairing. So the first ring you get is Marth, and then you'll meet like a person who's a cavalry member, and the second ring that you get will be at the same time. It'll be like a famous ghost person on a horse, right? So they really match well together. And so I'm assuming really, even on normal hard or whatever, if you were to just stick with those pairings as they give them to you, you're going to be fine. But if you want to experiment, you can go ahead and do that. And there are plenty of ways to experiment and to swap things around. And plenty of mechanics there where you can unlock certain things with one ring and figure out a way to take some of those unlocks and keep them permanent while you swap them around onto other rings. And so from that perspective, there's a lot of character builds that you could theoretically make. But I mean, hey, if you're going for a casual experience like I was and you're on normal classic, there's absolutely no need for it. You can just chill and play the game. So also to note, I remember when I had started this game, or just before I was going to start, I had joked about, I'd be in trouble because I wouldn't have access to a save state or anything like that. And so like, oh no, what if I mess up and one of my characters dies? Am I really going to have to live with that choice, or am I going to be able to load a save state? Well, it turns out that you have access to a time crystal in this game. It'll give it to you pretty early on. And that essentially works as a built-in save state. But really, there's another aspect to this, right? Is if I think back to Final Fantasy Tactics and how I used to approach that game and how I used to play that game, I would waste so much time reloading levels because I would play a level to a certain point and a character would die, or I just wouldn't have done it well enough. Or I would have done something stupid. I'm like, oh man. And that would make me quit the game and reload it and reperform all the steps up to that point. Because I mean, if you do all the same steps in the same way, chances are you'll get the same kind of outcomes that'll lead you to the same place. And what this time crystal does is it just lets you turn it back. So instead of you saying, oh shoot, I messed up, let me close it and I'll start all over again, it lets you just turn it back to the point where you messed up. And so I can, I'll understand why purists might not like that, but it is really a time saver in that sense. And really, if you don't want to use it, don't use it. And I know that's easier said than done. But that's how I'd look at it. Is, hey man, if you don't want to use it, if you think that's cheap, don't use it. Ignore it. So yeah, I don't know. I'll nowadays I'll look at it like the same way that I look at smoking. I used to smoke. I don't smoke anymore. I don't want to smoke, even though the option's always there for me to go smoke. I don't, right? So look at it that way, except on vacation. Sometimes on vacation I'll smoke. So therefore, if you go on vacation, you can use the time crystal. But if you're not on vacation, don't use the time crystal. That's the law that I'm laying down now. Anyway, so going back to the game, at home base at the Somnol, you'll have the opportunity to do quite a few things. You can dress up you can play dress up to a certain extent. You can buy outfits for your different characters and swap those around. But that'll be their appearance at the Somnol, not outside of it. That's my understanding. That's what I observed so far. There's also a cute little dog that you'll take care of. It's called Sami by default. And so there's like some relationship building you can do there. You can run around and pick up items. It seems that every time you do a mission and come back, there'll be like new things for you to run around and grab. You can talk to your team. So that'll be a big part of that. And probably now is a good time to talk about the what's the so-called support mechanic. So it's essentially another type of friendship building mechanic. And so to raise support in when you're in battle, you'll want to place your characters adjacent to each other. So I don't think on diagonals, not usually unless that diagonal character is attacking on a diagonal and you have characters adjacent. But generally speaking, if you keep characters adjacent and one of them does an action like an attack on an enemy, and if they have some sort of support relationship as defined in the reference manual that you can look up to double check it, you'll see a little heart blip over their heads and a nice little heart sound, which will indicate to you that their support level has increased a little bit. And so this kind of introduces a little bit of complexity in terms of how you approach your tactics. So far, I don't know that the support level really gives you any tangible benefits in terms of stats or anything like that, but it does give you dialogue, and it does give you some nice kind of story pieces. And so I like to see that, and so I enjoy trying to split up my army in terms of their support relationships, because in a lot of missions you'll have that kind of strategy that will be necessary to I'll need to split up the group in like three different parts and have them kind of approach the battle on three different fronts. And so another thing at the Somnol, there's also a fun thing called the Amiibo Gazebo. Amiibo are these like physical figurines that you can buy from Nintendo, and once you buy them, you can transfer their data to the console, to the Switch. And so for this game, if you have Fire Emblem Amiibo and you transfer data, they'll give you some redeemable music and outfit type of tickets, and then you can, through the menus, you can redeem those tickets for music and outfits. If you have just general Amiibo, you can scan them through and it'll just give you some generic reward, like in-game currency or something like that. And then the final thing, you can go to sleep. You can straight up go to sleep in advance time at the Somnol, and then your characters will just walk in on you as you wake up, and there will be some dialogue there. It's weird. And there are some like other, there's a Tower of Trials where you can fight other player characters, but it's asynchronous. So like some other player will go through the Tower of Trials with their build and their unique setup, and you'll go up against them. And then through doing that, you can take a look at what other players are doing and how their what builds are they using. And maybe do you want to try that? And other automated kind of level up systems. Also plenty of systems over how to upgrade your equipment, +1, +2 type of things, blacksmith type of things that if you've played other Japanese games in the past, you might be familiar with that. Also a bond system, so another friendship system, but specific for the spooky ghost people, where you'll upgrade the bond between the two and then unlock more passive abilities and all kinds of fun stuff there. So that's so much for the kind of systems and how they work. The graphics are quite good, and I don't think there's anything there that's earth-shattering, but it looks good and it performs quite well. I think one thing to consider is that it's a near first-party game that's been developed and finished somewhere around 2021, and so in 2021 before it was shelved. And so it might have been released in 2023, but it was shelved for a while because of other factors in the world. Although it might have been complete, maybe it's always hard to say, right? Because we're again very much on the outside looking in. But there were other factors in the world that necessitated delaying, that could have necessitated delaying anyway, and that would be obviously the pandemic and also the war in Ukraine. Anyway, going back to the kind of graphics and art design, well, I'll come to the art design later, but going back to the graphics. So there are some subtle kind of design choices that limit what the game is rendering at a given point in time. And so, one thing that I found is, okay, so after you do a battle, you'll pop out into a battlefield, right? And you'll be in this 3D person type of view. And it's kind of like, what if you were playing a non-combat Dynasty Warriors game, I guess, and you can explore the map, and you can adopt abandoned pets, and you can loot items, talk to townspeople, and so on. But in those moments, the maps are quite limited, right? They're very like short, small, canned environments, and what's rendered on a screen from moment to moment is limited, right? They never put you in a situation where you're like looking super far out onto things, and where there are a lot of things to animate while you're trying to move around. You also won't always hear footsteps when you're in this place, so there are like things there that are reducing the load. And then even in cutscenes, sometimes there are substitutions that are made between what's going to be fully animated, what's a 3D model, and that is just doing a canned animation, and then what is just simply a photo, like what is photo stills that or artwork that the dialogue is running over top of. Some of the animations, this is kind of like this is more gameplay, but some animations and the overall controls are kind of weird. It's not a big deal because it's not a big part of the game, but I did find it funny that, if you're running full tilt in one direction and then you slam on the control stick the other direction, you get a nice kind of slam the brakes type of animation, but then your character will immediately pop out of it, and it's just very jarring. And it takes you out of the immersion, and as soon as you get taken out of the immersion, or I mean, that's how I felt, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm reminded that I'm not in this world, and then I'm like, well, and then I lose interest, right? And the more I lose interest, the less I want to play. Back to design. So you can credit the character design to, I think, Mika Picasso. Oh, I want to make sure I get that right. Yeah, Mika Picasso, who is well known for her work on a manga series called Apocalypse Witch, and her work for creating VTube models for VTubers and VStreamers. The art design, it's really colorful. It really pops. To me, it feels really super saturated. And that'll resonate with some and maybe not with others. I think, especially for the Switch, that's a really good choice. And I'm here for it. In general, I like that kind of like saturated type of look and feel. In terms of sound, the music is beautifully composed and beautifully performed. The game boasts 3 composers who have quite the portfolio, including Takafumi Wada, Hiroki Morishita, and Yahisa Baba. Takafumi Wada has worked on a few Fire Emblem games, as well as some notable anime productions, including the 7 Deadly Sins, or Nanatsu no Taizai, and the High School of the Dead. Hiroki Morishita is a composer with Intelligent Systems, and has worked on several Fire Emblem games, as well as a few other Paper Mario and Wario products, including WarioWare. And Yasuhisa Baba is a composer that's most known for their work on Smash Bros, Super Smash Bros Ultimate and Brawl, but they've also done work on Fire Emblem Awakening and other Mario and Wario products. So that level of composition that you get allows for some pretty intricate pieces of orchestral music, and it's music that's playing around with majors and minors, and it's music that's trying to help set the mood and helping to accent the things that are happening in the game. And that sets the mood pretty well, depending on where you are and what you're trying to accomplish. When story moments are climaxing, the music is there to help kind of support the narrative. And so given some kind of weakness in the narrative itself, that the music ends up being really helpful to support it and keep it going, keep it propped up. In terms of value or playtime, I'd say you're looking to 30 hours at minimum, up to 50 hours. It just depends on how you beeline through the story content. There is some replayability in that you can approach the game on different difficulty settings if you want, and there are like a ton of customization options in terms of how you want to build your characters and swap the rings around and all of that. But if you're someone like me and is more like definitely a one and done type of person, then I don't know that there's so much there for you in terms of replayability. But I don't know, maybe replayability isn't so much of a thing these days. It depends. I mean, if you're on a budget, then it is. But nowadays we're really spoiled for choice. And even if you are on a budget, there are other options for you to be able to have choice on a budget, right? And that's where like the whole kind of subscription thing model comes in. That gives you like at least a base offering, right? Just go get Game Pass. I mean, really, that's like maybe $12 a month for you, and you'll live with the portfolio. Or I mean, really, you start talking about emulation. But I won't get into that. So all in all, you know, when I think about value, I'm not quite sure that it's worth the $60 US price tag, or out here in Canada, $80 Canadian. But I went into it because I have enjoyed Fire Emblem games in the past, and it had been a really long time since I had played like a really like a core Fire Emblem ass game. And that's essentially what this is. That's what I feel it is. Really, when you look at the core gameplay, it's a Fire Emblem. It's the Fire Emblem experience. But you know, I mean, to sum up, it's ultimately a 2021 game that was released in 2023. It does gameplay really well. That's the bread and butter. It's quite fun, and it's well supported by the music. But it's not the whole package. There are just like some things around the edges that need to be kind of shored up, and so that makes it like a solid 4 out of 5 type of game for me. If you haven't played Three Houses yet, I haven't, but if you haven't, and if you are somebody who cares more about narrative, maybe start there. If though you like the old Fire Emblems for their combat, you don't care about narratives one way or another, or you're not sensitive to it anyway, and if you're good at tuning out some silly stuff, you know, get this game. You'll be happy with the combat. Flip on the Japanese language, see if that helps, like it did for me. And that's it. That's it for what I've been playing. Just Fire Emblem. That is it. Yeah. We'll. You know what? I'm gonna take a quick break here, and then I will get into the news. So hang tight. Be right back. Hey y'all, we're back. Welcome back to the world of video games. It's time to get in to the news. So this week we found out that Nintendo, Xbox, and Sony would not be at E3. And so I'll back it up a little bit first, and just to explain what E3 is for those who might not know. So E3, or the Electronic Entertainment Expo, it is slated to take place from June 13th to June 16th this year. Just a big expo that shows off. It's like an industry. It started off as an industry media type of event that would show off games and really help media coverage get an idea of what's going on and then present that to the rest of the world. From there, as media coverage has been kind of dying out and it's been become more democratized to other people to do, and it's like it's slowly transformed into needing this kind of consumer or like just individual component to it. And so back in July 2022, VGC, there's an article there from, I mean, there are plenty of articles, but one that I picked was an article from Andy Robson at VGC, who reported that ReedPop would be taking over the running of the in-person E3 in 2023. And so ReedPop, founded in 2006, is an event organizer for fan-focused events and exhibitions. And they also run editorial websites, or have been involved in the creation of editorial websites, including those for video games. They're probably most well known for the events that they've run for PAX, the Penny Arcade Expos, which are gaming fests that feature exhibits to show off games, panels to interview industry professionals, and concerts and various other events. ReedPop has also run Evo in the past. That's the Evolution Championship Series, a massive annual fighting game tournament featuring the biggest names in the FGC, or the fighting game community. ReedPop also owns the Gamer Network as well, and that organization runs editorial websites like Eurogamer, GameIndustry.biz, VG247, VG247, Rock Paper Shotgun, and the Gamer Network is also a network partner of VGC itself, Video Games Chronicle. But now in 2023, reports have been circulating from many places that Nintendo, Xbox, and Sony will not be at E3. And so it's sounding like Nintendo itself wouldn't have as much to show off this year to make it worth it to buy floor space. Sony already skipped 2019 and was not planning on going there before the pandemic started up, before the 2020 Expo got canceled because of the pandemic. Xbox, in their Xbox Direct developer kind of event that was showing off games, they mentioned that they would be doing their own summer showcase, but they didn't commit to having a presence at E3. And so that was the first indication that they were not going to be, or an indication that they were not going to be on the E3 floor. And then in a subsequent IGN interview that Kat Bailey did with Xbox CEO Phil Spencer, he mentioned that Xbox would time their showcase specifically so that it's during E3, or like during that time frame, not necessarily during E3. But that they would work with the Entertainment Software Association, or the ESA, in their capacity, in Xbox's capacity as a board member. And so, Xbox committed their support, right? Committed that they would continue to work with the ESA, wherever it is that they can do to help make E3 successful. But that, the way it was phrased, the way that it was probably written for him, was, we'll help, but just as long as it doesn't come at any additional cost to us, basically. And that's all in line with what he was talking about there, about Xbox, quote unquote, reallocating their resources and getting lean. I think, if anything, that for me highlighted Phil's keen awareness that they have a commitment to Microsoft's business to run a profitable business, notwithstanding the ugly side of what those reallocations do to people, and notwithstanding how he might feel about it personally, which I think, obviously it's hard to say, right? We all will have opinions and we can all make our judgments. I think personally he takes it hard, and he takes it too hard. But in his position, that's a tough place for him to be. It's a business, and we have to make these again cold reallocation decisions, and you can't say you're sorry, because the moment that you say you're sorry, you're just opening yourself up to legal liability. So as we move on, over at VGC again, this year, Andy Robinson was reporting that ReedPop had received a lot of interest from major companies in the gaming industry, and so ReedPop was confident that the lineup would be worth the trip for whoever chooses to go out and make it. And so the kind of new format that they're going with here will be it'll be targeting two audiences, whereas before they were primarily targeting kind of like media and business, like really as a trade event. Now they'll be doing business and consumer events. And so for the first 2 days of E3, those will be dedicated to business. The third day will be for both business and consumers, and the last day will be for consumers. So if I think if you're ReedPop and you're trying to figure out how to take what you did good with PAX and Evo and all the rest of the events that you've run in your history, you're trying to figure out how to take that and then how to make that work for you with E3. I think the competitive environment there is kind of tough because you now face competition as an event runner now for industry and for consumers. You're facing competition from the major publishers themselves who are running these events by themselves, right? Like those major publishers who have decided to just hire or bring on their own production capacity, whether that's full-time or on a contract basis. And I mean, I would think that it would be on a contract basis, because you don't have to pay benefits or anything like that, and you can define the short-term nature of it and have it just be a short-term expense that you're done with after the show. And maybe you keep some like permanent capacity there, but you wouldn't have it all permanent capacity. You would have some permanent capacity, and then you would get temporary capacity, most likely. And then by doing that, then those kind of big publishers who are doing these events, or who are bringing on that own capacity in-house, then forego these events, and become kind of a competitor to you. You also have other event organizers who have entered into the space, and so now it's time to talk about Jeff Keighley, who is the Canadian video game journalist and turned media personality, turned frontman for positivity in video games. It's debatable, but he's been around for a while. And I would say I was reading a pretty fantastic piece on Jeff Keighley by Lewis Gordon on theringer.com. And it was chronicling kind of who Jeff is and where he's been from suburban Toronto, which, I mean, shout outs. I'm in suburban Toronto, I guess, on the very outskirts of it. And so how he started out there to becoming a major media personality, launching the Game Awards in 2014, as well as principally organizing and hosting Summer Games Fest since 2020 in partnership with various stakeholders. And so he'll be doing the Summer Games Fest on June 8th, I think, June 8th this year. And so it's competition with E3, but it's not necessarily direct competition because the dates are different. But it is the week before, right? So I think, I don't know, it's less of a consideration because Game Fest is a type of show that I think is more suited to broadcast over the air, or over the internet, whereas E3 is more suited towards physical, people making long trips, right? It's a 4-day event. You probably want to take the entire week. Whereas for Summer Games, it's like it's 1 day, it's the week before. Are you really gonna, take off all that time from Thursday into the next. I think people who are actually making the trip down will choose E3, and people who can't make the trip down will watch Summer Games Fest and maybe will tune in wherever they can to E3. So and now when I think about, you know, the rest of the publishers who are remaining, whether they're other bigger publishers or they're on the kind of smaller end of the scale, I think you're pretty happy with this news. Because, yeah, sure, like there's some of you who are depending on the big names to be there to draw in eyeballs, so that you might be able to benefit from that. But if you draw in the eyeballs, those eyeballs are going to go towards what they came for, right? They came for Nintendo, or they came for PlayStation stuff, or they came for Xbox stuff, right? I think really if the big three are voluntarily ceding the space, that opens up the floor to others to try and crack into some sort of share, like some sort of share of the market there. But you know, that makes some assumptions. First of all, we're assuming that the remaining publishers have good things to show off, or things that will be at least flashy enough to catch the attention of people. The second thing will that there will be sufficient amount of business people and consumer audiences on hand to pay attention to it. And then the third thing is that, you know, Sony, Xbox, and Nintendo don't run their events in such a way to deny that kind of opportunity. Right, if they intentionally overlap whatever events that they plan to do. So that's it for E3. I think that's kind of a interesting thing, and I'll definitely be paying attention into June. We're about, I don't know, like 4 months away or so, 4 or 5 months. The next thing I wanted to talk about was EA. EA released their Q3 results on January 31. A company announcement came out through Business Wire that was detailing what was going on. I'll back it up a little bit on EA. For those who don't know, it's a digital interactive entertainment company. They develop, market, publish, and deliver game content and services on multiple platforms, including PC, consoles, and mobile devices. They leverage various IP or intellectual properties for their games and services. And those IPs include Apex Legends, Battlefield, The Sims, Madden NFL, Star Wars, and FIFA Ultimate Team. Though FIFA will be falling off of their books pretty soon, and so they'll have to figure out a rebrand. I think they're going to call it like EA Sports FC for football club or something like that. EA markets, sells, and distributes through retail and digital channels, and so they run their Origin online platform where games can be downloaded, as well as through third-party online storefronts like Steam. They also have an EA Play subscription service for that it's available on consoles and on PC. So that's kind of like your Game Pass type of thing as well. And they mobile devices, PC games, additional content are available through third-party apps storefronts as well. So like you can get EA games on the Apple App Store or Google Play. So in this earnings report, the CEO, Andrew Wilson, emphasized that they had drove to record engagement with their customers, despite a tougher macroeconomic environment that negatively impacted their Q3 results, which you've heard that before. If you've been paying attention to Ubisoft, you've heard the same thing, right? There is truth to that statement, but it's also like it also feels like often a cop-out that is made to try and appease investors for difficulties in generating what they might see as sufficient amount of profit. The CFO, Chris, noted that they have taken measures to protect profitability given market uncertainty in Q3, and that EA is prioritizing the player experience by directing investment to where it can have the most positive impact for their players and on EA's growth. And so that statement, what that tells you is that they've canceled things. They've taken a look at what projects they have and decided to slash them. And what that also means is that whoever was working on them are going to get laid off. That's what that statement means. And so after taking on those charges or taking on those, expensing those things, what's left is what they'll focus on. So in subsequent reporting by Rachel Kaser on GamesBeat, they had announced, EA had announced that they were delaying Star Wars Jedi Survivor to release on April 28th. And that was pushed back from their original March 17th release date. And so that'll push any associated revenue into the next fiscal year for EA. And any money that they've collected on pre-orders will kind of sit on their liabilities until they've actually drop the game and start earning that money. Respawn noted that those that delay, the 6 weeks that they'll get, will be critical for them to be able to have a polished release. On another article from GamesBeat by Dean Takahashi, it noted that EA was canceling their Apex Legends mobile game and also their Battlefield mobile game. And so in a blog post on EA, Respawn, the developer, had a post there noting that there was declining quality, quantity, and cadence of their releases or of their updates for mobile. And so that was part of the reason or the rationale for sunsetting the mobile product. And so, this whole thing, we're really talking about another series of moves to cut back on costs and to appease investors in an uncertain market environment. And that'll come with layoffs. There were also rumors circulating that EA canceled an unannounced Titanfall game, and so that also makes me think back to Ubisoft, who had done a similar thing, right? They had basically written off a whole bunch of research and development costs, and they had canceled a bunch of unannounced games. The other thing here that I noticed is that they had obviously their share price slid quite a bit after the earnings report came out, but they also had kind of this flagging type of so they report their unearned revenue, right? So year over year, that stuff had decreased, which, I mean, it could be just a normal factor of, you're gradually earning revenue year to year, and so your unearned revenue will decrease. But such a sharp drop could indicate that I think it's from $779 million to $418 million. Such a huge drop in unearned revenue could indicate that there are less things that people are excited about to be putting in money in pre-orders, such that the company would then recognize unearned revenue. So now, when I look at the historical performance of the company and I look at their gross margins, which it's kind of the gross profits they have after you take your revenue and you take away the kind of manufacturing or software development costs that are most directly related to that revenue, then you're left with your gross profit. And so when you take a look at that gross profit, I think it was stable somewhere around 74%, which means that they're consistently keeping the same kind of efficiency in their production, which is a good sign. When you look at the operating margins, so you reach gross profit and then you take away all kinds of expenses that are there for you trying to sell your product, and that could include other salaries that aren't necessarily directly related to the creation of the games or the creation of the services, as well as any other legal costs, administrative costs, and so on, and you reach your operating profit. And so that has been slipping year over year. It was like 26% in 2020, down to 19% in 2021, down to 16% in 2022. And they've kind of had these ballooning selling, general, and administrative costs that have been rising, and it kind of explaining that slipping operating margin. But when I put it into perspective and I think on the big picture, there's still a company that pulls in $7.3 billion in net revenue and $1.04 billion in net income. And that's about like a 14% profit margin, which means, after all said and done, there's about 14 cents available on every dollar for distribution to the investors or for reinvestment. And so like, okay, that's fine. but I guess for investors, not so much. The year-end projections are pointing at something like 11.8% of a profit margin, and that would be pretty much what they got last year, which was 11.3%. But looking on kind of the up, or like what's good that's going on with them, they had noticed kind of an increase in participation on their live services. The Sims welcomed over 10 million new players to their kind of Sims community there during Q3 itself. And the EA player network also grew to more than 650 million people at quarter end. And so it's not all looking bad for EA. They're out there leveraging their IP to grow their player base. It's too bad about Battlefield and Apex, and it's probably too bad about losing FIFA, or at least the branding on FIFA. But hopefully they can carry some steam from the kind of FIFA and World Cup excitement into their kind of next FIFA, or next football manager, or whatever. It's not football manager, but their football club products, even without FIFA branding on it. So that's so much for EA. But moving on to Sony, and so with Sony, I was taking a look at a couple of different articles. I was looking at one from the Financial Times by Eri Sugiura and Kana Inagaki. Sony has recently promoted their chief financial officer, Hiroki Totoki, to the position of president and chief operating officer. Analysts see this as setting him up to be the successor to the current president, who is Kenichiro Yoshida. So both Totoki and Yoshida have a close working relationship, and they have been instrumental in the success of Sony's business, and particularly their consumer electronics business. And so Totoki's promotion comes at a time where Sony is now forecasting stronger profits for the PlayStation gaming business line. And it's coming at a time where most of their profits are now coming from media content, whether that's games, films, or music. The PS5 sales, or PlayStation 5 sales, and related operating profit forecasts are increased now for the Sony's gaming division. And also the recent strengthening of the yen, the Japanese yen, has been a boost for Sony for their gaming division, because the stronger yen then lowers the dollar cost of manufacturing and raw materials. And those items that they have to buy are denominated in dollars. So a stronger yen helps them save on foreign currency exchange. Their revenue increased by 13% for the quarter, and this was attributable to PS5 console sales. But there was a 6% decrease in net profit for Q3, and that was largely attributable to flagging performance by the film division. So when you think about what all is going on at Sony, Yoshida has been taking strategic bets on electric vehicles, and that's kind of been like a shake my head type of moment for investors, because on the one hand, you can understand the want to look into untapped markets before they boom and try to figure out where you can strike gold. On the other hand, EVs now look like something that's completely outside of the scope of what Sony is nowadays, right? Like they still have consumer electronics as a business, but it's kind of beyond that. And so when you think about like what's the likelihood that Sony will be a success in EVs, and it's low, or that's like the feeling that I get. And so there's a fear that if they go into EVs in a major way, that for the entire business, that could be something that kind of drags it down and drags down profitability. That's so much for EVs. When you come back to gaming and you come back to the PlayStations, their kind of biggest issue that they've had over the past few years have been shortages in getting semiconductors or getting components that they need to build these things and to get them out onto the market. And so depending on region, it could get really bad because they have constrained supply, they have to decide where they're going to put that. What is the best way to allocate that globally to compete where they need to compete with Xbox, right? And so what that meant was that they were sending the majority of their products probably to the US. And that meant that other regions were getting even less than what, people were experiencing with supply shortages of the products themselves. I remember, as I was reading, I came through a stat there in, I think it was May 2022, in Japan. Only there was 1 week in May 2022 in Japan where only 2,693 PS5s moved, and that's like an absurdly low number when you're thinking nationwide sales. But anyway, so since then, Sony has been making kind of aggressive investments into their semiconductor business, and supply chain pressures have been easing. And so both Sony and Xbox are expecting to be able to get more of their products out to market, available on shelves for people that want to buy them. And Sony now, in particular, finds themselves in a place where their various media business lines can work together. So they've done it with Uncharted, having their gaming and film studios work together to turn that video game franchise into successful movies. They're doing similar things with Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 properties. It makes me think of Last of Us as well. And really, all of this has been part of what it's the so-called arms dealer strategy that they're doing. They're actively avoiding getting into streaming wars with other big name players like, obviously Netflix, but Amazon, Disney Plus, and so on. Instead, they're saying, okay, let's get all the rights to all the IPs. Let's sit on those, and let's let Amazon, Netflix, and so on, and whoever else wants to stream come to us. And then we'll bid up the price. We'll let them bid up the price. And the highest bidder, we'll give them the rights on a limited time contract. And then we'll take the money that we get from that, and then we can bid it up again, or we can think about what's the next thing that we're going to do with this IP, and how is that, how are we going to get people to bid that up? And so that is it's a really smart strategy that's working out for them to reap the rewards from the rest of the incumbents who are busy trying to duke it out in that place, in that market segment. And so when you go all the way back and you think about the success with the PlayStation 1, their success in gaming, and how they did all of that despite skepticism from incumbents at the time, like Nintendo and Sega, and you think about their success in America when they came in with consumer electronics in the 80s, and how incumbents in America must have thought about, pretty skeptical of how successful they could be. Now they in 2023, they find themselves finally in a place where they have the right mix of media and the right capacity in music and games that's giving them a strong position, because they're finally able to pull those things together to make them a really kind of competitive, good buy, and to make some really good content. And that's it. That's going to do it for news. And of course that means that's all for me for today. I gotta go, y'all. Yeah, that was a bit of a corporate day for me, I guess. I'm gonna shut it down here on Twitch for the moment. I might come back later and play a game. I'm not sure. I haven't really planned anything out. I've been thinking about Forspoken more and more. Next week I'll look forward to probably a potential Nintendo Direct that's coming. Yeah, we'll see what that has to bring. Hey, if you're listening to the pod, wherever it is that you get pods, or you're looking at the archive on YouTube, thank you. That's all, folks. Thank you for watching, for listening. Every one of you count. Just gonna keep chugging along in life. That's the plan in life, and that's the plan on the pod or on the show. And I'll see you next time. Take care. Catch you on the flip side.